for coming to our retreat this weekend, and thank you very much everybody for coming and joining us. I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes in relation to your history, very short interview. It's exactly what we needed it to be for you to follow up with your single session therapy in relation to a new technique that you've created for the therapy world. I kind of want to know a little bit about you personally, Lindy.
Okay.
What led you into being a therapist?
Well, I think the answer to that question is that I was kind of very tedious and rather boring, because if you look at the histories of a lot of male therapists, they tend to be Jewish, they tend to be only children, and they tend to have something of the wounded healer about them. So I am Jewish, and I'm an only child. And when I was a child, I had a very bad stammer. I still have a stammer, but it's not as bad as it used to be. And when I had a bad stammer, of course, those lovely classmates and schoolmates would be very compassionate towards me, not. And therefore, I was intrigued, apart from the fact that I learned at a very early age, what to feel hurt was like. But I also was intrigued to find out why is it that people who were nice to me one minute when I was talking to them on their own would join in with this. I used to call it teasing. Now we would call it something stronger. But and so I was interested at that point to learn more about what it was about groups that change people's behaviours. And so when I started to think about careers, my strengths were in languages. I did A-levels in French, Russian and Latin, but as an interpreter I'd be no good because of the stammer, and the translation I wouldn't be that interested in, and with Latin there weren't any kind of Roman centurions around for me to talk to. So my father said, "Son, I think you should be a lawyer, because there are only two kinds of lawyers, rich ones and millionaires." And I said, "Well, that's interesting, Father, but I'm not interested in the law." So I actually studied psychology, because that seemed to be closest to those two factors that I outlined at the outset.
Okay, so it's almost, what I'm understanding from what you're saying is it's almost like the recognition of your own feelings led you to want to explore other people's feelings and their behaviours in relation to those feelings.
Well, recognition, yes, but also, why was it that people seemed to act towards me in a very different way? Sure, even at the time it wasn't just me, but it was that kind of curiosity. So I think the feelings were part of it, but I think the curiosity was another part of it.
Okay, and I must admit, Windy, this is a question I have always wanted to ask you.
Correct.
Windy. Where did Windy actually come from?
Well, I was Lord Windermere III, but I didn't like to use my full title.
Oh, really?
No. No, unfortunately for somebody with a stammer, where my sort of weaknesses were the letter D followed by a vowel. My name at that point was a letter D followed by a vowel, first name, and a letter D followed by a vowel, second name. So I actually decided that around about when I was 17 or 18, enough was enough, and I was going to change my name. Now, why Dryden, first of all? Dryden, I chose Dryden because at that time all the London telephone exchanges were named. And none of this 935 nonsense. There were television names, and when I used to live in Hackney, I used to live in Amherst. Still remember them as a number, Amherst 9305. Anyway, So I was living in Kenton in Middlesex, and around about that time, at that time, all the exchanges were poets and playwrights. So my number was Dryden 1151. I changed it to Dryden. Now I could say Dryden because even though it started with a D, the R softens it, so Dryden, that's very easy to say. I always joke that that if I lived around the corner, my name would have been Windy Wordsworth, because at the end, so I had to change that to Wordsworth. Now, why Windy? Because I decided that I wanted to learn the saxophone, and unfortunately, I had no talent for it. And so somebody who saw me play said, "Oh, you know, you kind of, it's like watching somebody with a lot of wind. I'm going to call you Windy." So I actually dropped out of university and went to kibbutz. Now my first name was David, and at that time, all the Jewish boys on kibbutz were called David, so that's one alternative name. So I became Windy for 6 months. So I got used to Windy, and so Windy and Dryden was Windy. When I was 18.
Thank you, because that is something that I've always wanted to know. And it kind of makes me wonder, you went down the cognitive behavioural therapeutic route.
Eventually, not initially.
Okay, so what led you to change from your original following of your original theory, and what was that?
Well, I was trained in, at the time, because the term hadn't been invented, person-centered therapy. At the time, it was called client-centered therapy. I'm not sure when person-centered therapy as a term was actually originated. At the time, it was client-centered therapy. Now, I liked the theory of client-centered therapy. I thought, Rogers had some good ideas theoretically, but I really didn't get on with the practice. It didn't really suit my personality that much. So I was, at that time, you learnt, we had a textbook called The Theories and Practices of Counselling and Psychotherapy by C.H. Patterson. And in that, it was a very good book actually, and I kind of resonated most with the work of Albert Ellis, who created a therapy called Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy, which I went to America to train in 1978. And in 1981, when I got married to my lovely wife, and the day after we got married, I flew over to Philadelphia to start a 6 month sabbatical with Dr. Aaron Beck at his Centre for Cognitive Therapy. So having learnt REBT, I then learnt Beck's cognitive therapy. And so the practice sort of resonated a little bit more with me, but so still I like the ideas of Carl Rogers, but not its practice. And I think that what that really told me was that it's very important, and I think this is where we kind of really differ from physical doctors and physical practitioners. It's really important whether you resonate with the ideas and that you practice what you preach. And I always I refer to a book edited by Ernesto Spinelli and somebody called Embodied Theory, and that is where people like myself were writing on that question: to what extent do we practice what we preach? And I think that's an important aspect. So I really couldn't practice client-centered therapy. It just didn't really sit well with me. And I experimented a bit with psychodynamic therapy, and again that didn't really fit well with me. And so I kind of veered towards the cognitive behaviour therapies, but not in a way that I'm sort of happy to say I'm a cognitive behaviour therapist now, because it's overly manualised. It's sort of far too much taken away from the individual who practices it. really you can't really use much humour because the manual won't allow it. You can't necessarily use metaphors because the manual won't allow it. So I'm happy to be seen as a broad brush or broadly based cognitive behaviour therapist.
Okay, and it's interesting you say that, because your ability to get on is actually really quite person-centred in my opinion. You know, you've been really accepting of what we're trying to do here, you've been really empathetic to me, and obviously we had a private conversation upstairs, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, he's following this particular theory, but actually he's practicing more than one, because his personality is really accepting.
Yes, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I've already been paid. But I think acceptance is not only a feature of person-centered therapy, but it's also a strong feature of rational emotive behaviour therapy. And I think that, unfortunately, the public face of Albert Ellis has led people to think that the other core conditions like empathy, sort of genuineness, and unconditional positive regard are being downplayed in our literature, and I've never really thought that was true. Particularly the man himself, once you kind of got over his public persona. Privately, he was much more kind of accepting and empathic than he was in a public arena.
So actually, listening to you, that ties in with my perception of what you've given me, despite the payment that we've given you earlier. There's only so much you can keep up a performance.
I know.
You've done incredibly well.
Thank you
on
very
that one.
much.
We're going to listen to you about your single session therapy, which, granted, you've corrected me on about 10 times now.
I'm going to have to correct it again. It's not a technique, and I didn't create it. But apart from that, I'm happy to talk about it.
Okay, so what would you say to everybody here as to the benefits of learning this particular approach that you're about to present to us this evening?
I think the main thing that really drives me to actually sort of offer my services to actually teach this stuff initially for expenses only is because I think it gives clients the opportunity, should the services be organised that way, to be helped at the point of need rather than at the point of availability. And since I refer to Carl Rogers, I think that who talks about this empathy, as you said, unconditional positive regard, and genuineness, the three core conditions. From what I can tell, based on the feedback that places have sort of implemented a single session and one at a time therapeutic service, is that the fourth core condition is being helped at the point of need. That, for a lot of people, is very therapeutic, and the more time we place between people coming for help and then actually receiving help, it just makes it harder to help them, and actually makes them less sort of amenable to being helped once their time has come to go along and to that appointment. So what I actually really want to encourage people to take away is that if you really want to help people at the point of their need, you do have to grapple with sort of the organisation of services to make that possible.
Okay,
And once you've done that, then there are certain areas of good practice which I'm going to outline this evening to actually put the flesh on the bones.
and I'm deliberately not going into that with you because of the presentation you're going to do for us a little bit later this evening, which is straight after this interview. So I kind of want to ask you just one more question.
Okay.
If somebody came to you and they wanted their vocation to be a therapist, they hadn't decided it was a vocation at that point, but that was the direction they were going in, what would be your best advice to them in relation to wanting to be a practicing therapist?
I would say really make sure that you are in it for the passion and not for finance. And also make sure that you're in it as far as you can. You can't be exclusively like this, that you're really there as somebody who's really concerned to help rather than to work out your own issues. So I think passion and altruism, I think, are the two main kind of criteria I would encourage you to think about.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, because actually that is the ethos of everything that A&A is actually about, having a vocation and having a passion. Because ironically, I'm sure you'd agree with me, when you have those, it kind of translates into a reputation that brings people to you anyway.
That's right.
And it ties in with it's almost like karma coming back on you. Coming from the appropriate perspective of a vocation, a heartfelt vocation, actually turns into a full practice. And I can certainly identify that with me, and that's what I'm kind of picking up from you.
Yeah, and I think that you know, if you are going into it, you know, to make money, then I think there's probably kind of easier ways of doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Wendy, I so appreciate you being here. We had such a lovely chat upstairs. Both you and your wife indulged me, listened to me, and learned a lot about what myself and David are actually doing. Appreciate the interview today.
My pleasure.
I've kept it as minimalistic as I possibly can. I'll probably have multiple questions if we carried on. But I think we ought to round it up and go ahead with your presentation, because I'm actually dying to see what you actually do here. I'm really, really curious.
Okay,
So I very much appreciate your time. So thank you, Wendy.
Okay then, thank you very much.